I can't tell you guys how many times I have heard somebody say My Hero Academia has no world building because it's set in Japan. At first it was funny, but now it's getting a bit annoying. This belief is not only a massive misunderstanding of what world building within a story actually is, but it's also a massive disservice to what I consider to be some of the best world building I have seen in all of manga. This video isn't going to be a deep analysis, but rather a suggestion or an explanation of how I view this series. The lens through which I view My Hero has given me the best possible appreciation of this story, and it's why I truly think My Hero is among the most concisely and efficiently told stories I have ever seen. I don't think Horikoshi wastes a single page or character, and that isn't to say he is without his flaws, but rather a testament to how focused the story is. Horikoshi has a fantastic grasp on the story he is telling, and that is why reading My Hero weekly has been nothing short of a fantastic experience so far. So without further ado, let's get into it. The title of this video is My Hero Academia: The World-Driven Narrative. That is a term I came up with. I'm not sure if anybody has used it before, so I'm not claiming I invented it, but it's a term that came to me whilst writing down some thoughts on My Hero. Typically, I think a lot of traditional stories can be categorized as either plot-driven narratives or character-driven narratives. Of course, the narrative will always be a mixture of both plot and character, but some lean much more heavily to one side than to the other. Vagabond is a prime example of the character-driven narrative. Miyamoto Musashi is a proactive lead. His decisions shape the narrative, and the entire series is essentially one massive character study. On the other end of the spectrum, you have something more like One Piece, where the narrative is driven a lot more by the plot. Our main characters are very reactionary, and though they do make a lot of proactive decisions, they usually are reacting to the demands of the plot. Storytelling is such a broad thing, and it's practically impossible to perfectly categorize completely different stories based on their narratives, but it's something fun that I like to do when thinking about my favorite stories. When thinking about My Hero, I think it does lean towards the plot-driven narrative out of these two categories, but like I just said, storytelling is quite broad and quite an interpretive thing, so I try to place myself in the shoes of Horikoshi and understand why he has told his story in the way he has. When thinking about different characters and how they've been utilized, the world and the effect it's had on a story, I came to the conclusion that the best way to describe My Hero is as a world-driven narrative. The world of My Hero is the foundation on which everything in this series lies. Every single character and theme explored within this story can be related back to the Hero Society that Horikoshi has created. And when talking about the Hero Society, you have to also include the power system in that discussion, because Horikoshi has woven these two things together to become one. The world of MHA is dictated by the power system of quirks. The impact it has had on society is beyond compare, so I like to think of the world building and power system as one thing in My Hero Academia. So let's apply this idea of the world-driven narrative to My Hero and look at it through this lens. A criticism I see a lot for My Hero is that Class 1A, or the students of UA as a whole, are poorly utilized characters outside of the more significant ones. They lack the sufficient development to be considered good side characters by a lot of people, and I do understand that because I too shared this exact sentiment not too long ago. In fact, I think nobody would argue that characters like Shoji, Koda, Sato, some others from 1A, or anybody from 1B are very well developed characters. I never had an issue with these type of characters because they're not too significant and their function is to make the world feel more alive, so I wasn't expecting considerable depth to begin with, but I never really appreciated them and didn't understand why Horikoshi spent time on them. But recently I came to appreciate them once I started viewing them less as three-dimensional characters, but more as tools that further our narrative in other ways rather than having an individual purpose in the story. So instead of looking for things like personality and originality in these characters, I was looking for the way they add to the themes of the story, the way they add to other characters, the more prominent and important ones like Deku and Bakugo, All Might, All for One, Shigaraki, the more main characters. And I was looking for the way they serve as a small part of this massive layered society that Horikoshi has constructed for this story. A good example of a UA student who has very little development but has been utilized fantastically and adds so much to my hero when you consider their screen time is Monoma from Class 1B. As I said earlier, the world of my hero is dictated by quirks, because your quirk is essentially who you are, and the world is run by people who embody their quirks. Most of the UA students are people who are blessed with powerful quirks, and because of that, they were drawn to pursuing the life of a hero. What's really interesting to think about is the effect society has had on these children from a very young age. If you have a strong quirk, everything around you is going to push you towards becoming a hero, despite the darkness that comes with such a dangerous livelihood. These children aspire to become heroes and fight for justice because of a society that has been indoctrinated with the belief that your quirk means everything. You are defined by your quirk, and this relates to Monoma in the sense that his quirk only allows him to be as good as those around him. The quirk copy allows him to duplicate and use another person's quirk after coming into physical contact with them, which essentially means Monoma is defined by those around him. But despite that, Monoma has genuine aspirations to become a pro hero. Because Monoma isn't as naturally gifted as the other students, he has to resort to unheroic tactics to succeed, like the psychological stuff he pulled during the joint training. Through this, Horikoshi is reinforcing one of the biggest ideas or themes in My Hero, the theme that people are not born equal. And even further than that, he is criticizing the idea behind heroes and questioning what it truly means to be one. Monoma is using unheroic tactics here, and sure, it's just a spar between students, but this is his fighting style. He will definitely resort to unheroic behavior as a pro hero. So this begs the question, is it okay for a hero to use unheroic tactics that ultimately work towards a heroic goal? Do the ends justify the means? Psychological warfare is the small end of the scale. What about having to torture a villain for information and ultimately save lives? Can a hero still be considered a hero if they have done some truly inhumane and messed up stuff? All of this is derived from a single side character who barely has any screen time. And I'm not even done. Monoma has an inferiority complex, which is obviously something he developed growing up. The belief that he is nothing without others because of his quirk has impacted him to the point that his entire personality has been damaged, and he is constantly living with the mentality that he is lesser than others. How is it that Horikoshi can write such a layered character who speaks to the core themes of this story so efficiently without even developing them that much? All Monoma has is this very short backstory. We don't know that much about him, but the things we do know all have a very methodical function behind them. They add to this story and give him purpose in this narrative. And ultimately, I think this is only possible because of the care Horikoshi has put into world building. World building is the foundation on which everything in this story lies. Everything relates back to the hero society. It's like a melting pot of characters and themes blending together to tell this story in this world, in this hero society. And because this story is so concise, the interconnecting themes gives every single character a sense of realism. They are all so believable in concept and have something to contribute to this story. The UA students are children with ambition born from their quirks and the indirect demands of the hero society which pushed them on to pursue heroism. The Shihasakai are people with their own somewhat rational ideals on hero society, and Horikoshi uses them to explore some of the realistic issues that can derive from such a society. Lady Nagant is a hero turned villain who is used to question the ideas behind the hero society, And I could honestly go on for days talking about every single character and what they bring to this story. Even if it might be something small, something tiny, they still have a role to play. They have something to contribute. Like I said at the beginning, guys, the point of this video isn't to analyze My Hero, but rather to provide a suggestion. Look at My Hero through these lenses. Look at My Hero with the perception that everything ties back to the hero society and has thematic relevance, because it does. I guarantee you'll find a lot to love in the stories and the characters you might think nothing of at the moment if you look at My Hero as this world-driven narrative. Every character and every plot point has a necessary function and brings something to this story, and that is ultimately because they are a part of this massive, multifaceted world that drives the narrative of My Hero Academia. I know this is a fairly short video, guys, but if you'd like to see deeper thoughts on this topic and some actual analysis videos on My Hero in the future, please consider subscribing and liking the video. If this does get some good reception, I'll make some more. Also, please feel free to drop a comment either with your suggestions for future content or anything you want to talk about, because I do read everything you guys say and I will reply if you have something interesting to say. Thank you guys very much for watching. It's been fun. I've been Fiji. Peace.